So this week's video is about returning to school, and you'll see I've got one of my puppets with me, and I've got a few others that I'll be bringing into this talk because I think they're going to be quite important. A lot of the focus so far has been on things like obviously safety. So how are we going to get the schools ready? And our poor exhausted teachers who have been coming into school throughout the holidays to try and help get the classrooms set up and everything else. Having some of them, they've been working 7-day weeks in the lead up to the summer, and just it's been crazy. I work with a lot of teachers, and they are exhausted. But cheerfully they've been, no, we're going to get school ready, and a lot of the emphasis is about making school welcoming and safe. Both of those things are really, really important. Now, there's been advice that changes pretty much daily. There's been lots of costly things that need to be done. There's been putting in extra, points for hand sanitizing, for hand washing and things like that. And there's also been expenses of just getting packs for children and students of pens and paper and things, so they've all got their own individual packs as opposed to things they might previously have shared. There's not been the money for this, but that's another issue. So they've spent their holidays making the children feel safe and welcome to come back. But what are, who are coming back? And we need to think about the children, because a lot of them will have changed. They will have changed over the lockdown period and over the summer. And they will have changed for several reasons. Some of them, not everyone will have changed. Let's be honest. For some people, as I've said in other videos, for some people this has been a fantastic time. Sounds awful saying that, but for some of them it has. It's been a time where they've had more time with their family. They've been able to do a relaxed learning. For a lot of special needs children, that has meant learning at their pace without feeling they have to fit in, and the competitive element. So there have been a lot of positives. Learning with new technology, all sorts of things. However, for some, there will be big changes, and not necessarily in the children who we're used to looking after in terms of their needs. Some of the children who have hitherto been the ones who maybe have led some of the trouble, and who've maybe been very, I don't need this, very brash, may well have lost people. They may well have had family members who have died. They will have had family members who have suffered. They will have been dealing with changes in the family financial situation, changes in, parents suddenly being out of work. There's all sorts of things they will suddenly have been dealing with that may well have changed them. So there will be some who through, there may be people who are really used to being very active socially, and suddenly they've been in pretty much isolation, and that's going to affect them too. So some of the children who have not been on our radar before will suddenly be on our radar, and it may be a temporary thing, it may be a permanent thing, I don't know. But for special needs coordinators especially, who, we've got the category of social, emotional, mental health concerns, there may be people who need support for that, who maybe don't have an underlying condition, as it were, but they may have needs at the moment that are daily, they are lasting, they fulfill the category. And both Senkos and teachers are going to need to be very aware of these children. There will be children who have suffered abuse because of being at home in maybe houses that were volatile but not quite so hostile, and yet during this pandemic it's brought out some pretty awful situations and some awful behaviours that they've had to manage. Our designated safeguarding leads are going to be very busy, I would have thought. So there's all sorts of people. There'll also be the differences in the education that they've received under lockdown. I've talked about that before. Some people will have had the whole luxury of parents who've really enjoyed this, and others will have had the situation where parents haven't had time to sort them, haven't had time to work with them, they've been pretty much left to their own devices. So there's going to be a lot of differences, and we don't know what that will be. Differences in the experiences, difference in the education. So who needs support and strategies is not necessarily going to be the same people that it has always been. So we may come back to school and think, well, we know we've got to look out for X, Y and Z. Actually, it may be other children as well, or instead, we don't know. So we need to be pretty open-minded about what we're going to come back to, because we don't actually know that at the moment, and we won't know that. We won't necessarily find that out on our first day back. You know, it may take time to work out who actually are the children with need at the moment. And I said before, a few weeks ago, that we need to take time to discover these things, not only for them to tell their stories and for those stories to gradually come out, but also for us to re-engage with our students and to get to know them again differently from how we've always known them, because they're not necessarily the same people that they were before all of this. So I think it's a time to embrace strategies for all, and there's a couple of things I want to look at. One of them is puppets. I think that puppets can be very calming. This one, lovely little, how well you can see that, is a dog. He's a very sort of bouncy dog. He does somehow have some sort of way of making a noise, but I can't quite remember what that is. But you know, he's a good puppet to use because he's incredibly soft, which I think does matter. People do find stroking something soft quite comforting and calming. He's also a bit of fun. He's got this sort of lolling tongue, a little bit of a waggy tail. I've said before, if you're using puppets, please make sure you keep them slightly on the move. Don't be looking at them all the time. If you were holding a pet, you wouldn't be staring like this the whole time. Don't hold them, I can't do it at arm's length because when I dislocated my shoulder, but don't hold them at arm's length and do all of that, because that's not very realistic. Hold them as though you're really holding them. Keep them on the move, even if it's just like, you know, paw going. Just sort of generally, if you have your arm moving slightly, it's like they're breathing, they're, you know, the head wagging, whatever it is, the tail wagging, whatever. So use them in a way that people can engage with them and will forget that they're just puppets. And people do. They forget they're puppets, and it's another way of those stories coming out. For some children, the fact that there's a puppet, they may well talk to the puppet, whereas they wouldn't have spoken to a person, and they may tell the puppet. So our job when they're telling the puppet is to listen and to hear what they're saying and to use that. So here's a good one. I do have some others that are also very good. Well, they're all very good, of course they are, but I mean good for this sort of situation. So I've got Rat Bag here. Rat Bag was my first. This is actually a new rat bag. My original rat bag is somewhat grey these days and actually belonged to the school, so it wasn't mine. This is my own rat bag. Rat Bag was a companion for one of my students who couldn't cope with paired work. He was on the spectrum, autistic spectrum, and he found working in pairs very challenging. But if he had Rat Bag as a partner, he would talk to Rat Bag and sit Rat Bag on his desk. Sometimes he would use him as a puppet, other times he would stroke him, and other times it was just literally sitting there and that's his partner. So, you know, you've got to discuss your maths. Okay, what would you do? And just talking, a talking partner. So these can be useful. Rat Bag, very popular with a lot of children, but beware if you have a Rat Bag puppet, because I have had very little children frightened of Rat Bag, which is a shame because I think Rat Bag's rather cute. So that's Rat Bag. This next one is a bit like Rat Bag. It's another mouse, this one. But this is, most of my puppets are very realistic. This one isn't. This is fun. Here's just a fun one. And to have quirky puppets, still hold them in a way that they don't see that your hand's shoved up it, as it were, delicately put. But this is slightly more quirky, slightly more fun. But people still amazingly do talk to it. So, you know, just having that there, again, keeping it on the move. But so sometimes having a fun puppet is more important than a realistic one. Another one, I'm just showing a few today. This one because it's so soft. This is one of my softest puppets. It's a little rabbit, so sort of very much use it like a thumper. Make sure that you do a bit of thumping. Maybe if you hold it in a way that you can get the back foot thumping a little bit. It's got lovely ears, do a little bit of the sort of yum 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 type stuff. Here's a very good one. This is the softest puppet I have. It's just the softest thing to hold. Very good for kids, just love stroking this one, and they will tell this one all sorts. It's also got a really sort of cheeky type face. It's very realistic, but it's also quite sort of cartoony, cheeky. It's just got these big eyes, and that does seem to make people want to talk to it. So that's another one. But I brought another one for today. This links actually with last week's video, because Rosie, who I was talking about last week, the one who did that amazing poem and illustration, which of course you can still see if you go through the videos, but this is a little bird. I don't know how well you can see it. It's a little bird. It's one of the ones that fits in the palm of your hand, which is very good because they're lifelike in size, and you can take these around wherever you are. I mean, I used to have one of these in my pocket pretty much all the time, and wherever I went I had a little mouse one, and I had this one, and there's all sorts, but they're very good. And this was Rose's little partner. It just calmed her when she was stressed. She could just sort of have it there. She would actually use it as a puppet, and it was just one of the things that helped keep her calm. These have been very popular. They're more discreet, so I think for some of the older children or the more self-conscious children, they find these very good. They're also, as I say, they're tiny, so you can walk around school holding that very easily. There's a robin one. There's all sorts you can get, but these are very useful. And it's almost like they can have quiet little conversations. They can come up and talk. With the bigger puppets, like the dog, you're likely to hear the conversation. Sometimes, though, they need their private conversation, and they might quietly. They're still offloading. Children are still sharing their anxieties. So all the puppets have their uses. And as I'm talking about anxiety, because I do think that's going to be one of the biggest issues, children who have come back into school and they have a parent at home who's not well. You know, Rose is going to be in that situation, her sister as well. They've got a mum who's not well, and there'll be days when they don't want to be in school. We'll talk about flexible schooling in just a moment. But, you know, this book, I've talked about these books before. This is by Kathy Hoopman. This is All Birds Have Anxiety. It's very good for understanding anxiety. It talks about how some anxieties are real. Some people are anxious about anything and everything, you know, and that there's good things about it. If there's danger nearby, you need to know about it. Of course, everyone feels anxious sometimes, which can be good if you need to take care. Being anxious can also help you hurry when you need to get things done. That's certainly been something that's been going on in schools recently, let's face it. However, some of us are anxious even when we're not in danger and life seems to be going well. That's going to be true of quite a few. Now, what this book does, it gives you ideas of what could set off anxiety. Now, change is quite often something that sets off anxiety. Schools are very much changed, and I think we need that awareness. But it also talks about how that might make you feel. You might not be able to speak. So when I've talked about young lady with selective mutism, the anxiety builds up in such a way that her voice doesn't come out. It's not that she doesn't want to speak, but she physically can't. But other people might actually scream, and we may find that some of the people who were very quiet before become the loud screamers because they just can't cope. They've had enough. They're at snapping point. They've kept it all together at home because they're protecting someone. They get to school and that's it. They blow. So we need to be patient and deal with that. We need to look at what have we got set up. And it may be that we've got puppets, but it may be we've got a safe area, we've got a space where they can go. We need something set up for those children who suddenly can't cope. They've kept it bottled up for 6 months and now it's all coming out. This is the final thing. They expected this when they got back. They can't cope with it. No way. There'll be others who go very quiet, and they're the ones we could miss. So just because somebody has gone quiet, they've lost their voice, they're feeling physically sick, I mean, please get this book. It gives you so much understanding about anxiety. Those children who go very quiet with it, we can't afford to miss them. That's really important. They could so easily become overlooked and just disappear. They will be melting into the background, going very quiet. Let's make sure we don't lose sight of them. let's make sure that we support every single one of our children, because we all need that love, that care and that support. And we need to be prepared, because it could all change yet again. It's changing daily, sudden new lockdown. We need to prepare our children. Thank you.